Welcome back to Open BXRx. According to research, almost half of the people who die at the hands of police have some kind of disability. What does this say about the lack of police training and sensitivity towards Black disabled lives? In order to bring awareness to disability solidarity, one artist has founded a movement called Black Disabled Lives Matter. Joining us now to discuss is Jennifer White Johnson, art activist and designer. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's not, I didn't start the movement. The movement has been like in place for decades. I really just um wanted to respond in an act of creative resistance and an act of solidarity to just put together a symbol and put together like art and graphics to continue to galvanize and like increase dialogue and increase unity. That was really like where I fit into all of this.
Thank you, Jen, for clearing that up. And my bad for messing that up in the beginning. So yeah, I just want to learn about you and your work and the Black Disabled Lives Matter movement and the solidarity graphic that we see in protests in some places, which you created.
um yeah, so I think that for a long time, um just within like my own personal artistic walk and accepting my own disability, I really had to figure out like what are some ways that I can continue to kind of be a part of like a much bigger movement and to continue to like observe and to converse with other folks that are like me, right, but that are viewed as disposable, viewed without value. So when I think of like disability movement, I think of you know influencers that have so much thought and can activate so much change and conversation, like Leroy Moore, Crip Hop Nation, Imani Barberin, Carches and Spice, Crip Camp. So many folks who have really spent a lot of time talking and being able to add so much to the conversation. And that's just like a few that come to mind because like I follow so many. Um, Talia Lewis, and just folks who really help to kind of activate the conversation. So um, when we're talking about Black lives and Black lives mattering and Black lives being looked at as like animals, as being disposable, we really can't have the conversation without involving folks who have disabilities. Folks who don't necessarily feel like society is accessible to them and in media and literature, and like our everyday like existence, and so a lot of the artwork that I create really is about helping to bring visibility, and it's really about helping to honor and to bring so much tribute to Black disabled people. My son, he's 7 years old and he's autistic, and I really want for him to grow up in a world feeling like the world respects me as I am, the world respects my humanity. I'm not necessarily viewed as like disposable, someone who's not valued in society, someone who can't, you know, make change.
Thank you, Jen. And congratulations on the upcoming Black Disabled Lives Matter mural. Can you tell us more about it and what it represents?
So I'm partnering with the National Alliance of Multicultural Disabled Advocates. Carrie Gray and Justice Shorter are two amazing DC based Black disability folks. And we have a team, and we're going to be commemorating the ADA 30th anniversary. And many organizations and many folks around the community on a national level are coming together to hold virtual programming to just honor, disability justice and disability culture, and to address, certain things that still need to change, that still need to be really like thought about. I mean, there are certain aspects of accessibility that we can highlight and that we can say, hey, like we're doing it, but there are still other aspects of maternal health care that need to be addressed. Uh, you know, web accessibility, making sure that people feel like they're included in the conversation when it comes to like digital space, along with physical space. And a lot of that has to do with how they feel like they're being treated or valued within like their own spaces in general. Like Mariah Person, who's another amazing autistic artist and dancer. And, she talks a lot about like reimagining spaces, reimagining inclusive experiences for Black autistic people. And, making sure that they can come into a space and be encouraged to like hold on to tactile materials that they can that have like a nice like stimulating like experience for them, like stim toys. And so I really enjoy Black disabled bodies that really help to ask the question of how can I reimagine and innovate spaces and conversations and dialogue and art. And to me, that's what the mural represents. It's like honoring um, folks from all different aspects of 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 their narratives, but then also honoring those who are no longer with us, who've been taken from us, who've been victimized by police brutality, by injustice, simply because they were disabled. Whether or not their disabilities were being valued within their own communities, whether or not like their values were being understood by their communities. Um, and so the mural itself is very hard to conceptualize because um it's celebratory, but then it's also like an opportunity to help tribute and to memorialize like these folks.
And when we talk about joining the conversation on disability justice, can we just define exactly what that is and what the challenges are with ableism and race when it comes to policing?
Yeah, and a lot of it comes with, again, like a lack of understanding, or basically putting disability in a box, and not realizing that there's a much larger conversation. And I'm not by all means an expert on disability justice. I'm really an artist that really wants to help galvanize community. So there are a lot of folks who've written a lot about it. Like Crib Camp is a really beautiful documentary that really breaks down the narrative of um, folks who were able to organize, uh, to act, to lobby, and to make sure that disabled people feel heard. And so the culture, disability justice culture, has been around for decades. People have been coming together for a long time to kind of make sure that they feel like they have a community, um, and that they feel like they're valued, and accepted. And so justice just means that we have, equitable opportunities, and not necessarily being able to, be in a workplace and feel valued. But it's like, okay, well, how do you uh, provide the accommodations that I need, like in the workplace, in the classroom, like if I'm, a student, that's struggling, with certain accommodations being made, whether I have low visibility, or whether I have, ADHD, or whether, they're autistic. What are some accommodations that can be put in place? Like what are the different ways that these institutions that are meant to uplift these communities, what are ways that they're continuing to amplify folks with disabilities? And these are conversations that are being had all over. And being ableist is saying, oh, like, well, you're lazy, and you're not really studying, and that's why you're not doing well in class. You're not that, like, it's not that hard, and all you had to do is just do X, Y, and Z. Everyone else is doing it, why can't you do it? That's a very ableist mindset, like assuming that everyone's learning style and everyone's approach is the same and should be treated the same. Being anti-ableist is making sure that amazing person feels like they're valued, and that they have the opportunity to feel like they're respected because of their disability. And when we talk about like anti-racism, making sure that Black and brown, autistic students, Black and brown disabled students have the same equitable opportunities that their white disabled students have. And I've been able to kind of, and a lot of that stems from how they're viewed in society.
Something you're doing to move away from that stigma is the Autistic Joy movement with your son. So you have a photo zine on your website. Can you just tell us about that and what this project means to you?
Yeah. And and as we're talking about, joy in the midst of so much sadness, and heaviness. I think about like narratives like Stefan Watts, who was 15. He was autistic. He came from um, a very supportive family who really loved him and encouraged the community to like accept him as much as possible. But you had a lot of the neighborhood and a lot of you know law enforcement who right needed to handle like his particular difference in their own way. And so that happened in 2012, and my son was born in 2012, and he was diagnosed when he was 3, in 2015. So um, I hadn't really done a lot of research at that time to see what the disproportion was in diagnoses, and even in terms of like violence, like what the percentages were of Black disabled, Black autistic folks, like how often were they being ostracized, like ostracized and being attacked just for their race and also for their disability. And so after my son was diagnosed, instantly I was like, look, I was like, either we can view this as how society wants us to view this, as like a sickness, as an illness, as a disorder, and that we need to quickly like normalize our kids, and they have to like learn how to adapt and to assimilate to like culture and this culture of compliance, and they need to be able to like to function out in like the normal world as like a normal person. And I saw a lot of negative perceptions and a lot of really like heavy undertones of ableism and anti-racism. And then I just really wanted to create a counter narrative. I really wanted to help create and amplify like, this is what Black parenting, this is what representation can look like when we just uplift and accept our Black autistic kids. And my son is a very joyful person. I mean, like he looks weird like when he's crying. He just doesn't even look right. He looks like an old man, and it's like, and he doesn't even like it when like I cry. He's like, "Fix your face. Like, why do you look like that?" And I'm like, "Man, like so sadness really affects him, and kids, you know, whether they're, neurotypical or neurodiverse, like they can sense sadness, and that is a stigma, where like a lot of autistic folks, they lack empathy, and 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 they read personalities a little bit differently, and it's true. But again, like, it's a spectrum, so every autistic body has very unique traits or different traits. And so with my son, he definitely can read my face. He definitely understands. He doesn't understand my sarcasm, but he understands, like, you know but but he understands like when I'm distraught, when I'm frustrated. And because I'm a designer and a photographer, I wanted to be able to just tap into that side where I could, where it's like, yeah, like there's client work and there's work that I'm doing for all these other communities, but how am I able to take all these really intricate vulnerabilities and just create a beautiful like expression, something that like can be like archived as legit Black representation. And it's amazing because it's archived at the Met, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, in their special collections. um like my publishers, Homey House Press, they have like a few books that are archived in the Met as well. And so it was amazing that the book was added to like the canon. The Knox Rocks photo zine was added to that canon. It's in the library at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. So it's really cool that it's like accessible. And I wasn't necessarily like, oh, well, my book has to be reviewed by the New York Times and it's got to be reviewed by like this. It wasn't really about that. It was really, if it could be in an accessible place like a library, to me, that means that it's like seen as like this historical archive of cultural ephemera. Like that means the world, because then folks can be able to say, hey, what does a Black and brown autistic neurodivergent family look like? And just poems, thoughts, and photos. Like, what does like a true representation, honest representation look like? That's not tied to any organization, that's not tied to any advertisements or sponsors, but that was just written like in a basement. Like literally, I'm like in my basement cranking out stuff. The photos are it's like a really beautiful reflection of when he was, you know, first born up until he turned 5 years old. And it's just like a really is and now he, you know, he's able to like use it to have conversations with folks. We've been in workshops with other autistic people and other autistic families, and we're able to present it and talk about it so that the kids feel like, oh wow, like that's me, like I see like a reflection of who I am.
That is so powerful and beautiful. Thank you so much, Jen, for sharing that with us, sharing your art with us and your son with us through this book. How can folks support you, the Black Disabled Lives Matter movement, and become allies to the movement as well? Just to close
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really cool stuff coming up. Again, as I mentioned, on July 26th is the 30th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. So various folks on a national and global level are doing all different types of virtual actions. So just make sure that you follow the hashtag ADA 30 in color,
Gotcha.
and then hashtag ADA 30. Um, so there and so basically on the 25th, the 24th and 25th, it's just like a BIPOC celebration, and it's actually called Decolonizing Dreams. And the National Alliance of Multicultural Disabled Advocates are putting a 2-day virtual event together that's going to be really amazing, and all of these cool disability justice speakers are coming to like help to continue the dialogue, and folks can tune in, and they want to be able to actually have like a live participatory mural on the 26th. So we're still looking for locations, still trying to narrow down like an accessible space, because we want for folks to feel like they can come and participate and paint a name, paint the fist, you know, all under social distancing guidelines. Like we take that very seriously. So at the end of the day, if it's like a team of like 3 people that are putting the mural together, that's cool. But then we also want to be able to make sure that people feel like they can come and participate, whether it's for 5 minutes and then they leave, or whatever they feel led to do.
Thank you, Jen. And I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but Jen is Baltimore based. So we're a little far from each other, but we're still in solidarity with you. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time today and for joining me.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you holding space for me to be able to like, you know, just rap and to talk about it all, because it's a lot of really beautiful things going on amidst of all of the heaviness. So
Course. Thank you. Folks, you can follow, support, and learn more about Jen and her art and neurodiversity movements by visiting her website at jenwhitejohnson.com. And you can follow her on Instagram at JTKnoxRocks. The link is on the bottom, and the way you spell it is on the bottom. Open BXRx. We'll be right back.